Okay, the job scam report is back. If you listen to the podcast, thank you very much for joining us. If you're watching the video, thank you for checking in with us here. We're willing to answer questions, engage with you guys. Last time the comments were on fire. So we'll be glad to answer any of those concerns you may have. You may bring up some new layers that we're into. We're going to try to rediscover and discover some new ones that we're into. Bringing back to the show, Ashley Price Horton. How are you?
I am amazing. How about you guys?
Oh, I'm
Good, good.
good. Yes, yes. And of course, we're back to profiler Jay Jones. How are you, sir?
Well, as always, thank you.
Yes. And just for the argument's sake, and we're only going to talk about if any of the presidential candidates has a fake profile. So if you know if they do, then we'll talk about it. Otherwise, we're not going to dig into the election because we're going to be too busy talking about some of the scams that we're at. So hopefully that if you have been subscribed to my Substack, if you're not, do so, it's the Job Scam Report. That's the name of the Substack, the newsletter, and the podcast for those who are watching. And hopefully you're getting a lot of value out of that. I just did an interview with Carrie Tomlinson, who's a reporter, a cyber reporter. She actually, you guys, I don't know if you saw the interview, not Ashley or Jay, but she actually did 45 talks in October alone. And she does it all volunteer, just so
That's
that you
awesome.
can get the message out. I'm hoping maybe if Carrie's watching, that maybe she might join us for one of our panels. That would be a lot of fun to
Yeah,
have her on and to bring in an element that she dives into. Deep fakes is only one of the things that she gets into. She actually covers a large part of the scam spectrum. If you guys want to give her a follow, Carrie Tomlinson, look for her news reporter, Emmy winning news reporter. I said, and so let's get into it. I know that this past week, Jay and I particularly have been talking a lot about career professionals tending to be
certified in
professionals.
anything and everything.
Yeah. And particularly,
Yeah.
you're right. And specifically certified. And the organization mostly we've seen is the Professional Association of Resume Writers Career Coaches. We've seen a
And
lot of
the
those.
and the
And the
NRCW
National
as well, yeah.
NRCW, there's a lot of different certifications. I shouldn't say a lot, but those, and is the National Resume Writing Association as
Mhm.
well. And there's a lot of offshoot organizations that are connected. Some of them include a lot of career professionals from various places. So I imagine, and Jay, you can elaborate a little bit further, but looking at the macro, I can see college career counselors eventually
Mhm.
being
Yeah,
imitated if they're not, which could endanger the students and probably not just on LinkedIn. I can see other people being content being copied and put on in other areas. In the way that you've been looking at it, you've been concentrating though on the ones that have the certifications and you look at the directory and you don't find them.
correct. Yeah, because one new wrinkle in it is what these scammers will do is they'll put previous years like 2014, 2016,
Mhm.
because you have to renew the certification every year or two. And it makes it look more plausible if they use an older year so that you look on the website and you don't see them and you're like, oh, they just didn't renew, but they're legitimate. But actually, that's another way that they can trick you.
Yeah, I can see that being a credibility. The longer you've been, or you can seem more credible. But if
Yeah, because, oh, sorry to cut you off.
go ahead, go ahead.
Because I encountered one gentleman, he had a certification, I believe, from about 2009 or 2008, and he just simply didn't renew it anymore. But at that time, he actually was certified and he listed it on his profile. So it's not an issue of him being deceitful. He literally listed the year he had it, but he just never went through the process of renewing it. So that does happen where you come across somebody who's legitimate who just opted not to continue recertifying.
But it makes them a scapegoat in the sense of that other people will copy his file and use the same content on big other people. Because I honestly, there's a lot of people who don't care what certifications you have as long as you're able
Mhm.
to help.
Yeah.
That is the case. But at the same time, if you pretend to be, then I would think, and to extend this discussion a little bit further, that people who are certified should be speaking up a whole lot more publicly. Now, I've talked to a couple of them and a couple longtime friends who are
Mhm.
great people. Aaron Kennedy, I'm giving you a shout out here, but specifically
Yeah, she's
talking to
cool.
her, yeah, she's cool. I've known her for more than 10 years. And so I know if I saw something that tipped me off that's Aaron, I'm going to tell Aaron, and I'm going to tell Erin, you should, hopefully, Erin, she would report it, is what she's been doing. She says she's been reporting, and then these sites get taken, or these people get taken down.
Mhm.
But if those profiles have been up for 3 or 4 or 5 days, even, they possibly may have lured somebody in.
Yeah.
Literally, it's not an over dramatization. Every minute it's up, that's somebody that they're reaching out to, they're messaging
Yeah.
during their whole, let me help you with your resume and their whole spiel. So every moment it's up is an opportunity for somebody to scam. So they need to be taken down quickly.
Go
You
ahead,
are
Ashley.
Yeah, with that, if you are somebody who is job hunting and you're saying to yourself, man, I want to get a new resume, I highly recommend to people that you speak to people in your network who have gotten theirs done and get a
Mhm.
personal referral as opposed to just blindly accepting something from somebody. For example, for me, I deal primarily with cybersecurity professionals. And so I'm constantly writing resumes for cyber professionals, right? So if you ask somebody about me, they're going to tell you, "Hey, I've worked with her," right? But you're not going to see me go out into people's DMs and be like, "Hey, let me do your resume," and I don't even know you. But
Yeah.
that's what you're seeing. You'll be seeing that a lot more now of people who are like going out and saying, "Yeah, let me do your resume, let me do your profiles and stuff." And then they either A, send you back something that's completely janky that you can't use, or B, they take your money and they don't even give you the service, which is wild.
And Ashley, just so that the way that she's seen successful candidates have been passed through. So I just want to be sure people know that, because certifications, again, anybody can help that can write it and make sense and make it so that people get hired. But when you have somebody like a recruiter who actually has done the hiring from scratch and all the way through the process, then you really get some good quality help there. So I just want we should make that clear. All of that to say is that there's other people who are writing it just doing it for the money, they're just
Yeah.
doing it for the hustle. But they're also scamming people because they're getting all their personal information. Let me add another
Mhm.
layer to this as well. I don't know if you actually you're probably familiar with the federal sector.
Mhm.
So when people apply to the federal sector, they put all of the history on a resume. They
Yep.
put a lot of their personal information on. So what they do is the federal resumes, they check your whole background. So let's say you're 40 years old, that gig you did for a year at McDonald's when you were 18 or even 17, you'll have it on your resume. And there's a lot of things that can come from that, especially you get the scammer who's saying that they're going to write you a federal resume, and which could be quite long and quite expensive.
Yes.
Somebody writes a federal resume charging $1,500 to $2,000. That's, to some degree, that's a bargain, because I know I
Yeah.
have some colleagues who write them for a whole lot more. For all that to say, you're not just giving away your money, but you're really giving away your personal information.
That's right. That's right. And one thing I'll say too, especially about the federal government portion, is you
Hmm.
can go on a platform like USA jobs.gov and complete their, like you submit and input your information, and then it will provide you with a template resume. Now, with that being said, it's only going to be as good as the information you provided, right? So that's
Hmm.
why some of these people can go in and charge these high amounts. But that's why it's even more important that you vet and then also really be a part of the process. Ask people, what's your process when it comes to doing these resumes? Because sometimes they'll just put stuff there, right? And when you're dealing with
Hmm.
the federal government, everything that you put down has to be accurate, right? Like you may have to do a polygraph test, right? So you
Yeah.
can't have information just there that you never did or never happened. Like you'll see people that just put metrics and there's no correlation. They can't speak to it or anything. So really be an involved part of your resume process. That's one thing I'm really big on, even for myself, is like any client, I need to speak to you first and hear about your background and if I can even help you. And then I
Yeah.
have you complete a whole form so I can get an idea of your experience. And then after your resume's done, we're going to meet one on one and actually go through what I've created and modify anything. So really
Hmm.
see what the person who's doing your resume is their process because they're the front line between you and a potential job.
Yeah. I think one of the things that people also need to keep in mind too, and some of that maybe let me deter from that to say that usajobs.gov is a government site. All of those jobs are vetted, every single last one of them. So it's really safe to apply there. What is what you get? There and flex jobs are the two that I know personally from personal experience, having worked with flex job on content creation. If you looked up me and flex jobs, you'll see my name somewhere throughout the years and all that. They really do vet their service. And I've even tested it out on several occasions, and they have vetted services. So they watch out specifically for those who are trying to pull the wool over your eyes. But yes, it's a carefully vetted process. And that might be something to consider if you haven't applied to a government job. Maybe you should, but just you just don't trust anybody who says they like federal resumes. You want to vet them very closely and even look at people they know. So I want to be able to give a shout out to a couple of people we've got who are on here. Rachel, you, thank you very much for joining us. We're glad to have you. And on my side, it says LinkedIn user. I didn't even get the chance to look
It's
at
probably
if I no, I think no, this person is actually is saying good evening from London. Very cool to get that here. And anybody else, you're listening, let us know where you're from while we can continue the discussion. But going back to the fake resume writers and maybe some solutions, I think calling them out is definitely a solution because their content could die from overexposure in the sense that
yeah.
they're exposed enough that they will just go away because LinkedIn isn't catching them as fast as we'd like to see. If they're up 4 or 5 days, like we talked about before, the damage could have been done.
Mhm. Yeah, because that's why I specifically tagged the, company, because whenever you search a company, any tags relevant to that company appear with their name. So one of the most popular ones was 10 Star Resume Limited. If you search that name, then you see my post right underneath. So it's like you can't escape it. And then the most recent one was Step X Resume. As of this morning, that website is the owner actually contacted me while you were speaking earlier, and he said he's gonna issue a DMCA takedown notice to get that website down because they copied the entire website. All 6 profiles are down on LinkedIn, and the page is down on LinkedIn too, so that's a win. But yeah, what the key is to call it out because, like I said before, they count on you being embarrassed about being scammed or
Right.
looking like you're not knowledgeable. But when you tell other people, then you save other people the risk of losing their life savings or losing any amount of money is a big deal. So yeah, you have to name them and shame them.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. There's two There's another layer to that. We talked about the federal resumes and people being certified, and some of these threads include misinformation as well about job search. Where these people are getting this information from, I'm not exactly sure. I lost what I had that I saw, but somebody was citing some statistics and I looked back at it and it was from like 5 years ago. And I
What's
understand that people want to seem credible in their like to get sales, so to speak, or get victims. But I think that people also can tell by some of the old information that be presented as new information. Unfortunately,
yeah,
there are people who are credible that also do that. But a lot of times, I think people they get bits of information and they say, "Wow, this person really knows their stuff." And you've got to vet everything. Ashley, I know you probably have more to say on that, but yeah, you got just it's fortunately we've got to do the work in our job search, and it's better to do it up front than on the back end.
yeah, and you know what? You make a really good point, and I think that's something that I personally could do a better job of is actually calling people out on that kind of stuff. Because even I myself see that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, man, the lies. But then I'm like, I don't want to be associated with this person, so then I won't even comment. But then therein lies the problem. And so being able to be more vocal and get out of your comfort zone and say, hey, and doing so and questioning what's being published and what's being shared, am I now a part of the solution? Because
Mhm.
Mhm.
there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of really bad practices, and a lot of things that just really need to be addressed. But then sometimes people feel like I don't want to get on this person's bad side because they had 100,000 followers and blah blah blah. And that person may very well be fake.
Yeah, the followers are fake too. They're literal websites dedicated to buying followers, comments, profiles. Like, so the number is not something you should always go by. It's the content. What these people do, these scammers, they'll like front load, like I said before, with a lot of complimentary language. They'll front load with stats. But if you, we have the right to ask questions like, where did you get this stat from? And how did you find me? Where do you see my application from? What system is it in? Because they'll lead with the fear-based ATS resume optimization, but a good friend of mine, Russell Irby, he does this as well. He'll ask them
Mhm.
questions and he'll be like, which ATS system did it not pass through? And then they start fumbling because they're just used to, you hear ATS, you immediately comply, you can help, and then I'll pay you my money. But no, once you start asking 3 or 4 questions and you start to see that they fumble, they mess up, and then that's when the scam is over.
There
Yeah.
we go. Like, okay, are you using bullhorn? Like, what tools are you actually using to do these things? And then the tools that you use may not be the same tools that another company uses, which is why I always advise people to go with the traditional route. So you'll come across people who do resumes. And
Mhm.
I think this is really important. And they may not be scams, they may be legitimate, right? One thing I recommend people do, especially to increase your chances of getting callbacks, is to create those more traditional resumes because no matter what ATS system a company is using, even if it's an outdated one, your resume is still going to scan properly and the information is going to come in properly. Because let me tell y'all something.
Cool.
I
I know.
remember,
I know what you're going to say.
I remember I had received a resume from somebody like on LinkedIn and they're like, hey, can you consider me for a position? And I got their resume and I tried to put it in the system. And what some of these ATS systems will do, it will parse your resume. So it will take
Mhm.
information from specific areas and then plug it in. It wasn't
Mhm.
picking up none of that. And let me tell you, I don't have time to type all of that stuff in manually myself. But that resume had been designed to be properly read by an ATS system, even the weakest one, it would have got picked up. So when you
Because they
see
were
these,
writing in the white space.
when you see these, when
They were
you see
typing in
these,
white spaces.
yeah, when you see these ones that have like lots of pictures, at least in the US, I don't know about anything overseas, right?
Mhm.
But at
Mm.
least in the United States, when you see all these pictures and icons and imagery and stuff like that, avoid it. It's not going to be in your best interest. That might work overseas. They may have a different process, but at least in the US, try to make sure that your resume is done by somebody who can make sure it passes all ATS systems, not just one or two.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not enough to look pretty, it has to actually perform.
It's the content. It's the content
Yeah.
that matters the most, instead not the design for the fact that make it stand out amongst all the resumes. People are not looking through paper anymore. They're looking at digital. And when you see a digital file, you can't tell the difference in whether this person is using a little color and the person isn't. But I think people have gotten carried away with that content because they're looking to stand out. I understand where it comes from, but honestly, some of the stuff that is dealt with today is stuff that dealt with back in the 2008, 2009, 2010, where people are mostly, it's content and presentation is what most people get stuck at, or quite
Yeah.
honestly. You can't be too fancy. And I think that's great advice to people who need to listen, is that boring is probably better.
Yeah.
Or
And just for the people again, when you say on the back end in the ATS system, if somebody has a resume that's content driven, that it has all the qualities that this role presents, but they have all these borders and stuff that it still goes in properly, the other side doesn't even see that. They just see the text, right?
well,
No, necessarily. So it depends on the ATS system. So I'll speak on one that I used, which was Bullhorn. And okay, bye. I'm sorry, I just saw a comment. I've seen a whole bunch of my crew in here too, by the way. Okay, hey. Guys. But depending on the tool, so one tool that I had to use for a role was Bullhorn. It will
mhm,
absorb the content, but you have the ability, if like let's say I'm like, oh, I really like what Jay's profile is saying. Let me download the resume that he submitted. Then I can download it and then I can actually see it.
mm,
So then I'll be
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
see all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, that's why I asked. Yeah. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Thank you.
Yep.
no, that's good information. I think too, there's a question of whether people should use graphs or not, and that whole thing. And that again, that's an age-old discussion where a lot of times, if you're able to articulate the measurements, graphs wouldn't necessarily be a have to have. It is great for a presentation, especially if you're using graphs and you're applying to a retail position, that probably wouldn't be appropriate and way over the top. And
Mhm.
sometimes even people use language that they've heard other people use, but it's not appropriate to the industry or to the position. That throws people off. And that to say, that's also notable when these scammers are using stat lines, the things they've gotten it from other places, but they don't realize context is everything.
There
So
we go.
you see something that's in a post and it reads, and I wish I would have I had it somewhere. I thought I saved it, but I didn't. But you'll see, wait a second, this doesn't apply to, why would it apply to this position? Or why would it apply to this industry or to whatever the discussion is? So people often will cite something that sounds good. It necessarily isn't good if you look the next layer too deeply. So
Yeah.
I want to be able to move on a little bit more because this is really important that Jay brought up about the scammers using Calendly to trick people into installing malware. And really, people aren't necessarily going to Calendly, the site. Is that right, Jay?
What it is, they're using the legitimate Calendly site or Calendly, however you say it. They're using the real site, but they're creating a QR code that is compromised that allows them to access your
Mhm.
phone, get into it to access your contacts, your personal information. And the other variation of that is connecting your Facebook to make a meeting. And from there, they use a keystroke detector to assess what your login info is and then try that on different other social media outlets and websites because typically what you use in one place, you might use it in other places. So they'll go that way. And with Calendly, reaching out to them, they take down the sites as they find out about them. I send them the links and they've taken down at least 10 with that artisan talent imposter scammer so far. They're on it. So it's causing a blow to it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the site coming down is really probably the biggest thing first because it's
Mm.
anybody can stumble upon it publicly. But if it's a LinkedIn, you have to have a LinkedIn account to to access it. Although that has changed a little bit in the past few months. I don't know if you guys done a Google search on your name or not, but recently, if you've done a Google search, you'll see some of it, especially for both of you, since you're active and you get a fair amount of engagement on your post, it shows up on Google now. Once upon a time, the LinkedIn posts didn't show up. Now they show up. So the conversations we're having, like our live, will likely show up on Google search when you look for it. So whatever people are putting on LinkedIn, it's getting the broader audience now.
That's
And
good. That's good.
that's good. As
As long as it's good stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and that's where I was going. It's good if it's good stuff, but if it's not, then people from the outside are getting a false sense of security that they think that, well, if it's on LinkedIn, it must be fine, and that's not
Yeah.
necessarily true. So people are going wayward.
Oh,
Ashley,
one more.
you
One.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. One more quick note on the scheduling thing. Another counter I thought of when it comes to scheduling a meeting is if you have any sort of suspicions and whatnot, you can simply tell the recruiter, and a real recruiter won't have problems with this. Is I know there's a potentiality of scams, and I'm only comfortable using a link that I send you for a meeting. So can we do that instead? And typically they'll acquiesce and go through your link. But if it's a scammer, they're like, no, they'll give you pushback because they need you to use their specific link because that's how they scam you. Sending your own link is really a painless process.
Yeah, and if there's one red flag, there are going to be many more usually.
Hmm.
I'll
Which I would
put that out
say
there.
to that,
Go ahead, Ash.
I be careful with that one too. So I haven't done the research to be able to say 100% yes, 100% no. However, a lot of employees, especially at like your Fortune 500s and whatnot, they are trained not to click on links in emails,
Mhm.
right? And actually, some of these companies will block them because they have to protect the integrity of their network and their
Okay.
servers. And there's no guarantee that you might work for a competitor and be trying to infiltrate my systems. And now I clicked on your link and now bam. So if you do get pushback, understand that it could be spammy, but at the same time, it could be because of company policy as well.
Hold that thought there. I'm going to progress, but I'm going to come back to that because I just had a conversation recently with, I told you guys about earlier, Kerry Tomlinson, which kind of relates to that very scenario because I can see how things could go left, but it's not the way that most people think. But I just want to be sure that we covered that anybody sending you a link for everything, anything, that's why it's important to do the research behind the person that's sending you and you're interacting with you, because that's where it's all at. If it's somebody you trust, obviously that's different than somebody that's you new and that hasn't quite earned your trust or has some behavior that acts in a way that they'll take you to places where you don't want to go to scan a QR code. Now, usually most recruiters that I know are very forthright and forthcoming with what they have, the reason why they want to talk to you, and they're able to give you whatever you need. And I think even in the conversation, say, "Hey, I'm just trying to make sure that you are who you say you are."
Hmm.
And I think that somebody who is scared, it will scare them that they'll be found out. But I think sometimes what you use in the language up front, say, "Hey, I just want to make sure you are who you say you are," because there's fake recruiters all over the place. The fake hiring managers all over the place. And they're even using big companies to bait people, not just the small ones, not just small startups. They're using the NVIDIAs, the Microsofts, and so
Hmm.
on. So I think that people need to be aware of that they really do need to do that information up front before they really engage with the recruiter.
Yeah, you can never be too careful.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, have you had incidents during, and probably it's been a little bit since you've done the recruiting, but are people asking you to verify who you are as a recruiter?
So my recruiting days were a minute ago. So I have not done that in quite
Okay.
some time.
But if it's
How
been but if it's been the past, it's been the past 5 years, right?
Yeah, and no, they would just send me their resume, like literally right to my DM. And that's something that I want to caution people against too. Just
Hmm.
because somebody says that they are a recruiter and you may have a mutual connection does not necessarily mean that person is real because people just
Right.
accept people. And so, with that being said, be mindful of how you're going about this. Mark talked about using Google, right? You can go on Google and you could type in a person's name and see content about them and information about them. Do some research on this person before you send them your resume because you don't know if they're Joe Schmo or who. Really
Right.
protect yourself.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Something I do want to go back to as far as the interview process and being taken somewhere. We discussed last time about going to WhatsApp, and I hope people are into understanding what that really means and what that entails. That means don't go to those places if that's the only place they want to interview you and engage with
Mhm.
you. But I think the other part is well, Carrie Tomlinson and I talked about deep fake and deep fake videos. And during our conversation, we talked about the scenario where, let's say, somebody brings you to a place that you don't recognize before, and then they can actually use deep fake videos to further gain your trust so that you can go all in on this fake interview.
If only they got a real job.
Yeah, if well, but deep fakes are going to be, we're going to see a lot more of those. I think we're going to see those in our LinkedIn shorts and things like that. I don't know if somebody's going to dare to do a long form because basically you can eventually spot a deep fake video. And if you want to know more about that, if you put in Kerry Tomlinson and how to spot a deep fake video, you'll find some very interesting things. But mostly, a lot of times there's still pictures with the mouth moving and all that. If you do a current interview now, one of the first things you may incur is say somebody it says what they want to do will hire you off of these companies, and your interview with the first person could be an avatar. Well, to make it real, if that person's mouth is moving and yet the frame is still, that could possibly be a very legitimate one. But at the same time, it may not because of some other sides, often because the quality is not good and all that. But deep fake videos are going to be a thing here in the future. In fact, I would even say that it's current. It's just probably not as widely used as yet. But I think people need to be aware of it, start thinking about those things because you're going to have to vet all the information that comes before you. There's no real safe space without it. I don't know if you guys have any experience or any comments about that, but I think that if we realize that people are using artificial intelligence in a good way, in a bad way,
Mhm.
you got to look out for the fake way. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
it's true because the AI headshots and they're used by real people, but that's because they don't yet have a professional photo. But an unknown part of that is you're rendering your likeness to the entity that allows you to create the headshot. And so that likeness, if that data is breached, then they have your likeness and they can use it in deepfakes across the web. It's a messy situation. That's why I'm against it. I understand you want to portray a professional appearance. And so that's why you should just set your own self up and take the picture yourself instead of giving your likeness and appearance to AI. But that's a different level to have a whole interview with a deep fake person.
And
Yeah,
let me also say, when it comes to those kinds of companies, make sure you're reading through the terms and conditions and the privacy policy, because what you'll come to find is a lot of them are selling that information and data, right? So you just want to make sure, like, how is your image being used, and will there be potential consequences, especially these tools that are free? Right? Like you guys, I don't know how many people do this, but I'm very hesitant about going on my mobile device and downloading a free AI, change your picture, add a filter kind of
I
thing.
haven't done
'Cause,
it yet.
okay,
Yeah,
where are you making your money at on the back end? Right. So that's one of the ways you can safeguard yourself. And then two, when you do validate that a company or an individual is actually legitimate, I highly recommend keeping a spreadsheet like in Excel of like the person, the company that they're with, what's that company's legitimate career website and link, right? I know I just pivoted a little bit, but keep
Mhm.
track of these things. Number one, it's going to keep you from having to do a whole ton of research over and over and over again. But two, you'll have something to go back to. So if you are job hunting, you can say, okay, let me just go back to my sheet, click on this career thing and see if there's a position that they posted recently. As you having to
Mhm.
depend on LinkedIn and wondering, are they going to hit you with the QR code you got to scan and now you're scammed, or a Calendly link and now you got all this malware. There's a lot, right? I know I see a whole bunch of my community members in here. And
I
the
was
other
going
week
to
they were
say, I
asking,
was about to go through the comments and
yep,
dig into some of those. So,
yep,
There's another there's one more
go
key
ahead, Joe.
point. Yeah, there's another key point regarding, the selling of your data. That's a workaround. They'll say they don't sell your data, but what they'll do is sell advertisement. But in the advertisement, they send it's called, what Google specifically is Google Ad Exchange. They send data associated with your Google account during this ad auction process, and that can include information like your age, location, and interests. So while they didn't directly sell your data, they sold the list that has your data for ad space. So that's how they get around it.
mm,
Well, what's interesting, and in back in June and July, I was saying this a lot. When people fill out applications, a lot of companies don't tell you how they're using that data.
No,
that's right.
So therefore, I wouldn't doubt at all that companies are selling data to people in their industry, to
yeah,
third party
Yep.
companies, and it's being used. Like
Yep. How much
now,
saved? Oh, sorry.
and I think I was going to say too, a lot of us don't read the fine print when it comes to who says agree to terms. We skip that part.
agree.
We go to an ad, we go into anything, an app, we skip that part. So it becomes an ecosystem. It goes into the ecosystem of information that's out there. Some companies, and I think that this needs to be true of employment sites, and I don't know if people feel comfortable doing this. I say if you care about how your information is being used in the long term, that you learn to look for uh, how before you fill out an application, go do the research to see what they say about how they're using it. Because some
Yeah.
companies even have you decide how do you mind being sold to a third party? No. Or yeah. Or do you mind your information being used in a survey or questionnaire and only putting data? No. Yes. Things like that. You should
Yeah.
take the extra few minutes to fill that out because that's where you're going to get companies, and I'm not making fun of the company. Well, let's say it's Aflac, and Aflac comes and they're offering you a great position. It sounds like a great position until you see it says commission only. That may not be something you want. That I'm not saying that's illegitimate. It helps to read the specific information, and you should look a little bit deeper into. I don't know how it is these days. I haven't gone on Indeed in a long time, other than to read a few articles where if you're filling out information on Indeed, does that tell you how that information is being used? Because it's also the aspect of those jobs, which you can table to next time, and how that data is being used. But I think
I'll share
those are
two
things
things.
to be careful. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, I'll share two things. Number one, I actually, and apologies for the background noise. Now my daughter is back to being on the scene. But I will share
Mm,
this. Number one, I actually come across a job posting on LinkedIn where in the bottom it said, we will use your information. You agreed to us writing you with AI, sending you messages, also something along the lines of sharing this information with their partners. And when I said that,
mm,
I was like, oh, that's not one we want to be applying to right there.
right.
And then number two, if you are saying to yourself, man, the terms and conditions and privacy is mad long, who got time to be reading all of that when I'm trying to apply for applications? Let me show you a quick tip on what you can do, okay? You can actually take that whole thing, plug it into ChatGPT, and tell it to pull out the main sections of how it's going to be using your data, right?
Excellent.
Yep.
Awesome. I love that.
Yep. And then you can, and depending on if you have like certain browser extensions, you can just put in the link. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry about the background noise. You can just put in the link. Olivia, give that to me. Here. You can just put in the link and then have it read that information and just give you the key findings. And then if you're like, hey, does it sell my information? Who is it providing my information to? Then you'll be able to extract that information more quickly.
And hopefully people will get in a space where they will take the extra step, because most people,
Mhm.
they apply to jobs through the mindset of scarcity, thinking that if they apply to 100 jobs, they'll get at least a couple of interviews and maybe a job out of that. And we know by now that doesn't work. We know that is not a sure thing. And the
Mhm.
odds, I don't think there's, I don't think there's a Las Vegas betting line for that, but I think that it is a risk, because then you put your information, your personal information out there 100 times. And you likely, out of those 100, like we talked about last time, you're going to have some scam offers, unfortunately. So I do want to get to the comments, because that's part of the fun of our show.
I
And
see
I
all
was,
here.
I
I'm like,
see,
Ashley,
yeah,
ENH, come represent.
yeah, Pasley Hutchison Jr., thanks for joining us. He had a comment about, yeah, they definitely feed on your fears for sure. When we talk about social engineering before, and I think that's a big part of too, of how people go through applications, because some of it is based on missing out, or the fear of not being included, or having a shot at it. Some of it out of desperation. And I know, Ashley, you talked about the desperate hashtag too. We'll get to that eventually, because I do want to talk about that, because that is something that is a concern. But I hope to cover it in the next few shows that we do. Adrian Turner, thank you very much for joining us here. He says, and I'm waiting to come back up, the links these people will go to scam. Absolutely. And you're going all the way in. Here's something that, and Ayla Schroeder, I just want to bring up her comment. Now, watch you guys' reaction to this. She says, so many scammers would mysteriously disappear when we start asking questions. Sadly, move on to easier. Don't suggest that people go in and say, oh, there's no victims here. Let me go somewhere else. We want to get them. We want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
We want them to get caught. We don't want them. But having to say that though, that's the MO of a scammer, though, right? Jay, they go scam and then they come back as somebody else.
Yeah, most recently I was talking about I have a case about Corn Ferry scammers, and
Uh,
they all refer to themselves as part-time recruiters for Corn Ferry. Same boilerplate copied message, maybe like they changed one word or whatnot, but it's typically one photo, minimal contacts. It's a new profile. And what they'll do is I've timed it one time, they give you about 10 minutes to engage with them. And if not, then they block you. So they need to move on because, if you leave that, what do you call it? If you leave that exposure, which is that message out there, then that's a line to actually expose them. Anytime I get a message from somebody I think's a scammer, I screenshot it right away. And if I'm not able to investigate it at that moment, at least I have it captured so I can look at it later. But yeah, they disappear because they don't want a paper trail.
Ashley?
Yeah, speaking of paper trail, and this may be the ADD in me. Speaking of paper trail, one thing that I'm going to recommend you guys do, because I want to give you guys a bunch of solutions. One thing that spammers will do and scammers will do is send you emails because they want to see if that email is active, right? They want to see if
Mm-hmm.
you're active looking at that information. One thing that you can do to protect yourself if you're using Google, like a Gmail account, I don't know about the other ones, but I know for a fact Gmail, turn off images. The only time that images are allowed to be downloaded is when you manually accept and allow it. Why? Because what ends up happening is with Gmail, it will send that person a notification that you've opened your email even without a red receipt. But if you
Mm-hmm.
turn off images, the person will never know that you opened their email unless you allow the downloading of images. And what you'll come to find is that some companies are sending, like even me, like when you run marketing messages with ConvertKit or whatever tool, it will let you know what the open rate is, but you've never put an actual image in there. But in the hands of a scammer, if they're trying to see, okay, which of these emails are active, how can I find their information potentially on the dark web, get their passwords and stuff like that, and gain access to their account when I know this one is active? Maybe I can't get you, but maybe I can send John over to get you. Maybe I can send Billy over here to get you.
If I could
Decoy.
add if I could add a little hack as well, if somebody's sending a lot of the scam emails are coming from Gmail accounts, right? So if you put their person, let's say you don't necessarily have to open to get the email address in some cases. You put the email address in an empty, like you're filling out, you're going to send someone an email. You can go to Gmail and put the same Gmail in. You can see if an image does appear or not. And you might be able to Google it to find out if there's other people. And there's been a couple of times when I found there are multiple, the same names, different images, but they all had the same, they all have, like, they're all recruited or they're all engineers, which is silly. Then that tips you off in knowing that person's is out to do any good. So I think that's something that, yep, Rachel, I agree. Everybody should Google themselves. Everybody should Google themselves, not for vanity's sake, although that's good too. That's not a bad idea to see what's being said about you, but it's possible that your name could be used or in a scam, or even your name and your picture. And in fact, I would even venture to say, go to some of the other social platforms to be sure that your name isn't being, one, you can make sure that nobody's searching your name because of put somewhere you really work where there were incidents and names being dropped. That's one way to make sure that you're okay that front, but also to make sure that your image isn't being used for schemes, and report it if it is. Do that work as well. They may only just have whatever content they put on, you put on LinkedIn or somewhere else, but they're scraping from all different social networks, not just LinkedIn. I just want to be sure we're clear about that. Uh,
Mm.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I want to add to that because even me, I myself have fallen victim. And I want to share this story with you guys, and I'm going to be super quick. If you
Mhm.
guys are thinking, I want to go the route of like freelance, right? And I want to offer my services to people,
Mhm.
right? I have used a platform like Fiverr, literally Fiverr, signed up an
Mhm.
account, created my page and everything like that. And then I got a notice from support that I could not continue because they had to do some verification. But what I didn't realize at the time was that actually it wasn't Fiverr that was writing me. It was a
Mhm.
scammer. And they scammed me because they were paying attention to when did a new account get created. And when that new
Right.
account created, then they sent me this email. So they were able to get my ID, my location,
Wow.
everything under the guise of this is a background check. And so, why am I saying this? Even if you come across an opportunity and you think it is legitimate and they want you to do a background check, do not let that anxiety fool you into willingly give your information without vetting. Because this happened to me. I was like, oh my God, I got to get this set up or I'm not going to be able to get these contracts and stuff. And bam, I ran to my bank, ran. I was
Mm.
like, they want to take my money.
Right. Right.
Ran and closed it down. And so just be very careful. Another gentleman just recently reached out to me and he said, hey, I got this offer. I thought it was so great. They told me I needed to order some equipment. I ordered it and all of the money in my account was gone. So, one of
Mm.
the biggest things that you can do is prevention to protect yourself. Yes, it takes a little bit of extra effort, but it is as opposed to the consequences of what can happen.
Yeah, most of bank apps these days, I don't know when that happened, but you can actually check, you can put a stop on all a transaction on your account if something has happened and you might have actually given your information uh yet. So that way you don't necessarily have to scurry down to the bank
Right.
and physically do, but you can do something and call the bank
Mm.
and say, hey, or is there anything being presented in my name or being presented to me that looks suspicious? Let me tell them what happened. And it's good to log that with the bank because a lot of times you're not the only person and they may be even on the case of finding out who's because
Mhm.
they're prosecuting on the low key. These major banks are prosecuting, like Chase. They're prosecuting these folks.
Yeah, Chase, yeah.
They are at
I
they
There's one
have.
okay.
Go ahead.
said that's where I worked when I
Uh,
was a software engineer.
Go
and
ahead,
one
Jay.
quick sidebar, given that times are hard economically, people look around their homes to sell things and they're like, what can I sell to get some money and income, especially if you've been out of work for a while? And so what people
Right.
will do is list stuff on Facebook Marketplace, but there's a scam there with Zelle. And so what people do is they'll buy something from you and then they'll lodge a complaint with Zelle saying they never received the product or it's a
Right.
fraudulent charge. They get all their money back and they took what you sold them.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. That's gone off there for some time now, but I think
Mhm,
yeah, I think if you give people your Google Voice number, I talked
mhm.
about Google Voice last time, a email, if you get a screen number where they don't have your real number, you can manipulate that a little bit better. If you're using landlines, I'm so sorry. No, not many filters for the landlines, but your cell number has a little bit more viability. Apple, the app, awesome. Android, the answer is email. I think that's my opinion, but I haven't used Android in some years, but they have come a long way and it was really great even back then. I do want to get to this inquiry or this question from Mylet Williams. Thanks for sending the question. With an example of the AI picture making, do you think other AI companies are doing the same or using it information? Yes, I do think they're using it. And especially small startups and everybody using AI just about everybody using AI and they're focusing the business on pictures. It is a startup and that's how they're going to keep marketing to you. So I think the short answer to that is yes. If you guys want to chime in on that, I'll go into the next question. But did you guys have anything else?
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I spoke on that earlier. Yeah, if you upload your picture for an AI headshot, they have your likeness and your image. And then if you're a startup, then you need to raise capital. And how do you get that capital? You have to sell the information of what you have. And that's your major selling point. We have X amount of users. They're on the website for this amount of hours a week. And this is how we market them. This is how many headshots we've generated in a week over a month. And all of those things elevate you so you can get that additional capital put into the business and no longer be a startup.
Right. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yep, and I apologize. I have a firm stop in 4 minutes. But to that
Okay.
point, I just want to share this. Just go in and read what the terms are because one day you're going to turn around and you're going to see a post and it's going to look just like you and it's going to be you. And you're going to be like, how the heck did they do that? And you will have granted them those rights potentially in using the terms and conditions, right? And read them and make sure that you actually accept what it is that they're doing with your information.
Great point. And being that you have a hard stop at any three, so that because you know how we start to talk and we get too deep to turn back. And hold on, like, do that. But Jay, where can people find you? Are you anywhere else other than your website?
LinkedIn/n/Jones, do you copy? And working on some other things at the moment, but you can find me in those spots.
Good deal. And you still have your banner up?
Took it down this morning, but I'm gonna add it back. I'm just doing some things right now, playing around to see
Okay,
how the
I was just,
yeah, yeah.
I was just saying. And are you adding it back visible or not visible?
It's visible to recruiters only.
Okay,
So I
good
switched
to
it this
know.
morning. Yeah.
Good to know. I may be asking you some questions that we talked about. Well,
Oh yeah, I did want to speak about that, but yeah, we're out of time.
yeah, we're out of time, but we'll put that on our for the next show. I
I know
put
you're
Ashley
part of
and
the race.
Jay's information. Yep, and I put their information so if people want to capture that on the screen, they can. You can go back and listen to the show on the LinkedIn post. eventually it'll be up on the podcast. And also, I'll also post the YouTube link if you prefer to watch the video on YouTube, in case you might have that app that has the continuous play. So in the meantime, thank you very much for listening and watching the job scan report. Appreciate you guys' time. You guys take care, be safe. And if you have any questions, hit us up.
All
All right,
right.
see you. Bye
Thank
bye.